So the next topic is interpretive challenges. Interpretive challenges means there are three things that make it very difficult to understand the book of Isaiah. There are three complicated things are there. So we shall consider those things, those three things. Number one is there is no strict chronological order. That is one thing. I'll explain. Then there is prophecies like the glorious reign, just as you are asking me now. That is in chapter 11. Then there is a gap of 150 years. Now these are the three major issues that hinder us in understanding this, book of Isaiah. Now, first of all, there is no strict chronological order. That is true. Now, Isaiah is not writing in a systematic manner. Now, chronological order means not according to the incident. For example, the first 5 chapters, Isaiah wrote. Then chapter 6, we see something else happened even earlier. That also I'll explain in detail later on. Okay. When we come to chapter 6, you will read about the call of Isaiah. Only after the call of Isaiah, he became a prophet, servant of God, and he began to write those messages. And that we see in chapter 1 to 5. So there is no chronological order. That is true. And that we have to understand properly. And then when we read from 13 to 23, the chapters we see, they're also irrespective, in spite of the chronology, the time, we see he has grouped the messages about the nations or against the nations together. 13 to 23, we see the oracles against the nations. So that is one thing we have to be very careful when we study the book of Isaiah. There is no strict chronological order. And the second thing is, now chapter 11 we see about the millennial kingdom, about the life in the millennial kingdom. It's unbelievable. Just like some of you are telling me now. Millennial kingdom, as we see in chapter 11, we see a lamb and wolf and leopard all living together. In the normal condition, it's very difficult. You see chapter 11 verse 6, for example. Just see chapter 11, 6.
The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf, and the young lion, and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them.
See the little child, wolf, leopard, young lion, all living together. In the human point of view, it's impossible to understand. So people will say it will not happen. It's false. It's only imagination. What is your answer about that? So that's a problem. That's a hindrance. That's a challenge. We have to answer that. So what Isaiah writes about the life in millennium, is it possible? Can we believe that? Our answer should be, there are so many prophecies of Isaiah already fulfilled. So we believe what Isaiah is writing even about the millennium will be fulfilled. Okay. Now the third difficulty, third challenge is a gap of 150 years between chapter 39 and 40. I told yesterday also. It's another major challenge. Any person who will go through the book of Isaiah, they will understand easily. After 39, there is a change. You just see that chapter 40. What is the beginning? How does it begin?
Comfort, yes, comfort my people, says your God.
Yeah. Comfort, yes, comfort my people. From there onwards, Isaiah is writing words of comfort. You go through all the chapters, you will see Isaiah's emphasis is comforting the people of God with the promises of God, with the greatness of God, with the message of salvation, redemption, restoration, and so on. Those certain people, they said, after 39, it seems somebody else wrote. Because in the second section, it is encouragement. It is, encouragement, comfort. So there is a 150, gap is there. Now, gap I say because we see about Hezekiah and his sickness in 39 or by the end of 39. Hezekiah, the king of Hezekiah, how he was healed, how he made an alliance with Babylonians, and how Isaiah spoke about the future captivity, Babylonian captivity. Then we see words of comfort. And these words of comfort are meant for the people in captivity. But actually captivity happened when? After 150 years. 150 years after Hezekiah. So there is a question, how is it possible that one Isaiah could write about that will happen after 150 years? So the critics, they say, one Isaiah wrote 1 to 39. Then another Isaiah who lived in the days of Babylonian captivity, maybe who lived in Jerusalem or in Babylon, he wrote chapter 40 onwards, 40 to 66, to comfort and encourage the people of God in captivity. So how to understand it? There is one thing is very clear. 1 to 39 and 40 to 66 are different. There's vast difference between the contents. So these two portions cannot be written by, there are people say, cannot be written by one person because there's a gap of 150 years. Now the critics, they say, you see the first part 1 to 39 and you see the 40 to 66. As I told you, they are dwelling upon the background. Yes, the background is different. One is the time of the kings, 1 to 39, and 40 to 66 is the time of captivity, the background. But how to understand? How can we explain it to somebody who will ask that question? How is it possible? Same Isaiah could write something that happened after 150 years. Is it possible? What's your answer? Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what's your answer?
Yes, sir, it is possible, sir.
How?
Because sir, in different background, as message, na sir. Because of different background, his message based on the background, na sir.
You see 2 Peter 1:23. Just read that. 2 Peter 1:23.
Okay.
Second Peter 1,
23.
No, it's
not 23, sir.
No, 23.
21.
21 is there.
Yes, sir.
Read that.
For prophecy never came by the will of man, but the
Yeah.
whole men of God spoke as they were moved by the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit possessed them. Holy Spirit moved them, the prophets. Prophecy never came by the will of man. The Holy Spirit moved them, possessed them. So we can understand that it is very much possible for the Spirit of God to transport Isaiah or a prophet from one particular background to another viewpoint. Though he is in Jerusalem, the Spirit of God is able to take him to the condition in Babylon, which will happen 150 years later. It's not impossible for the Spirit of God to do so. We see in the Bible, not only Isaiah, even Ezekiel had such visions, such revelations about the future events. And when we come to the New Testament, who also got revelation of the future events? John the Apostle had. And even Paul had. Paul speaks about the revelations he had in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. So, background is different, but that doesn't mean that 2 or 3 Isaiah wrote it. Background is different because the Spirit of God moved Isaiah from one particular background to the other side in a spiritual manner. Thus, he is able to write about it. And the second thing they say is style is different. You see 1 to 39, 40 to 66. The style is different. The writing style, the words he used, difference may be there. But we must understand Isaiah's ministry, writing ministry, it was for a long time, 40 years, around 40 years. Now, in our case also, we understand as the years are passing by, our words, our style, our preaching style, teaching style will be different. So that is normal. But if we carefully go through the book of Isaiah, we will see more than the difference in style, the similarity in style is more significant, more evident. So if there is any difference in style, that speaks of the change of situation in the latter years of Isaiah. And the third issue is about the 150-year gap. You know, the theme is different. Theme means the theological concept. And that is again the weakest argument, because in the first part of Isaiah, the emphasis is, of course, certain things about the sins of Judah, judgment and so on. And in the second part, the emphasis is on redemption, salvation. And at the same time, we see all through the book, all these themes and topics can be seen throughout the book of Isaiah. If at all there is any emphasis, difference in emphasis in the second part, that is because of the changed political condition under Manasseh, the wicked king. And fourthly, another point the critics are bringing is the reference to Cyrus. We see in the book of Isaiah, we see a reference to Cyrus the king, who will live maybe in the next century, a century later, 100 years later. Is it possible? Is it possible for Isaiah to write about a pagan king's name even before his birth, 100 years before his birth? Is it possible? What do you think? Give me answer.
It is
Is
not
it possible?
No, sir.
No, sir. It's not possible.
It's not possible, but by the Spirit of God,
No, my question only this much. Can a prophet like Isaiah speak about the name of a king who will live after 100 years? Is it possible?
yes, sir. Possible.
Yes, because we believe the predictive prophecy. We believe already seen the Spirit of God is moving the prophet. They don't speak according to their own will.
Yes, sir.
Now we have another example in the Old Testament, that is in 1 King chapter 13:2, a man of God. He speaks about Josiah, who will, a child named Josiah will be born, and he will settle the issue, the evil thing of Israel. And that happened actually around 300 years later, that we see in 2 King 22. So we understand there are examples where the Spirit of God is able to help a prophet to write about even a name, a person who lives later on, years later. And finally they say, when you read second part of Isaiah, that is 40 to 66, the exile is assumed rather than predicted. The exile is assumed rather than predicted. Now there we see in that point, it is true, author is assuming. Author doesn't say that they are going to be in captivity. That is spoke in the past. That is the first part of Isaiah. But in 40 to 66, he is assuming as if he and the people of Judah are in captivity. That is true. As I told you already, under the help and guidance of the Spirit of God, he is able to sense it. He is able to feel it, how the people of God are in captivity. Another thing, we see by the end of, even in Isaiah's dates itself, Israel was captured by Assyria. Or Israel has already, northern kingdom, already went to captivity. And because of that, the people of Judah is able to feel it, how the people of God are facing life in captivity in Babylon, in Assyria. So Isaiah is able to help the people of God with words of comfort, who will be in captivity around 100 years, 150 years later. So these are the 5 questions or 5 points they are making, the critics. The background is different, style is different, theme is different, and also a reference to Cyrus, who lived a century later. And also finally the exile is assumed rather than predicted. 5 things. We have seen the possible answers also. There are 5 reasons why we believe the unity of the book. 5 reasons. How many reasons? Very quickly I will tell you 5 reasons why we believe one Isaiah wrote it. First of all, the New Testament testimony. The New Testament testimony means the New Testament writers have referred from the first part of Isaiah as well as the second part of Isaiah, saying Isaiah wrote it. We see throughout the New Testament, there are so many references. The New Testament writers are quoting from the entire book of Isaiah. And the second reason is the structure. The structure means Isaiah, the book of Isaiah has a very natural division. Now, division means, what do you understand? We will see that later on. We can broadly, easily divide Isaiah into three parts. 1 to 30, 1 to 35. Correct? 1 to 35. 36 to 39. And 40 to
66.
66. Thank you. So this broad, division is very much natural. If you take it 1 to 35, there is a continuity in that. And 36 to 39 is actually historical parenthesis, where we see about Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, and the Assyrian threat, and Hezekiah's sickness and his healing, and so on. And then 40 onwards, the captivity. Message of comfort for the people in captivity. So when we take the book as a whole, it's very clearly, we can divide it in a proper manner. Structure is very clear. 36 to 39 is in the middle, being a conclusion for the first 35 verses and an introduction for the remaining passage. There is no confusion. So if we take the whole book as one book written by one Isaiah, because of the structure, it's very clear. That is the second reason why we accept it. And thirdly, the voice of the tradition. Traditionally, the Jewish people, the Josephus, the Jewish historian, and even the Apocrypha, the church fathers, and the general witness among Christians throughout the past centuries, till 18th century, they all believed that one Isaiah wrote this book. And finally, the fifth reason is the archaeological evidences. Now, when we say about the archaeological evidences, the prominent one is the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What do you mean by Dead Sea Scrolls? You heard about that, I'm sure. What is that? Dead Sea Scrolls.
Sir,
Yes.
Sir, in Dead Sea, they found that part of Isaiah.
manuscripts, sir. They found manuscripts.
Who found?
One shepherd boy.
Who is answering me?
Answer. Hanok.
Anok is answering. Okay. Yeah, one shepherd boy found. How he found it?
Unfortunately, he threw one.
Unfortunately,
He thrown one rock, sir.
why?
Something.
No. You see, it happened is in 1947 it happened. These boys, they were looking, this boy, he was looking for a missing sheep. Did you understand? One boy, a shepherd, Arab shepherd boy was looking, searching for his missing goat. So he was searching in the valleys, on the mountains. It's happened. Then he threw a stone. Of course, by chance only he has done it, but he was actually searching for his missing goat. Then that stone, he heard a sound as if something is broken. And he sensed that some kind of, earthen vessel. And he called his friend also, assistant. They both entered into that place. They found a cave. And in that cave, they found many jars, earthen jars. And in those jars, they found, and of course, they They brought the experts and they got the, scrolls dating back to more than 1,000 years. Those scrolls are called Dead Sea Scrolls today. And in those scrolls, we see Isaiah together. In those Dead Sea Scrolls, we have the book of Isaiah also. And there, the book of Isaiah is together as we have today. That cave's name is Qumran Cave. Okay, that is one of the major evidences for the unity of the book of Isaiah. Then another archaeological evidence is the discovery of Sargon's palace. You see, in Isaiah chapter 20, there is a reference to Sargon. You see chapter 20, read chapter 20 verse 1.
In the year that Tartan came to Asdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, and he fought against Asdod and took it.
Yeah, there is a reference to Sargon the king, Sargon king of Assyria. Outside the Bible, there is no reference to him. So people said Isaiah wrote a blunder. The Bible is not right. And then later on, the archaeological experts, they found another discovery. In 1842, one archaeologist, he discovered the ruins of Sargon's palace near Nineveh, with all the treasures and inscriptions, refers to his name and refers to the Assyrian Empire. So that proved the truthfulness of the Bible. That proved the unity, the inspiration of the Bible and the book of Isaiah also. So these are certain points that we have to consider in connection with the interpretive challenges. As we study the book of Isaiah, we need to consider these things. No strict chronological order, and the prophecies like Isaiah 11 referring to the glorious reign, and also the gap of 150 years that we see in between chapter 39 and 66. Okay.